Chapter 2 of The Paper Bag.
I shook my head and looked again. A baby? Who puts a baby in a shopping bag and then hands it to a complete stranger? I paced the floor as I whispered my rant just in case the shooters came back. At that moment, I heard someone try the door. It took long enough, I thought as I glanced at my phone. 5:16. Shoot, the store opens in less than an hour. I scrambled to get some clean clothes on. What am I going to do? I looked at the baby in the bag. I don't know a lot about babies, but it hasn't made a sound or moved. Maybe it's not real. Yeah, maybe it's a decoy or something so the bad guys didn't get the real baby. What if the man with the fedora is the bad guy? All I have to do is open the door and hand the bag over. In my gut, that just didn't seem right. Why would the man in the fedora risk his life for this if it didn't mean something to him? His biggest mistake was giving it to me. I've never cared for a baby. So tiny, babies usually aren't this small, I thought. I don't have a clue what to do, so please be a doll. I reached in and carefully lifted it out of the bag. Please be a doll, I whispered. It was tightly wrapped in a soft pink blanket and was wearing nothing else as far as I could tell. I was too afraid to unwrap it. When I lifted it, one tiny fist popped out from the covers. As if it was on hinges, it bobbled with every slight move of my hands. I sat on my cot and studied the thing. Are you fake? I asked it. Its skin was pearlescent and seemed to change in color. Like a holographic picture, it shimmered back and forth from pink to skin tone. She was beautiful even if she wasn't real. I cradled the small thing in my arms. The pink blanket had me assuming this doll was supposed to be female. I ran my thumb softly along her cheek. Her skin was smooth and soft, just as I expected it to be. The surface, however, as cold as the rain outside. I ran my thumb upward. The skin didn't feel right, more like scales on a fish. I lifted the doll closer to my face to get a better look. Her entire face was painstakingly covered with soft, tiny scales that made a faint diamond pattern. They even went around her eyes, where her long eyelashes grew out from underneath, a perfect line of smaller light brown scales outlining her eyes. The door rattled again. I could hear muffled talking. At the same time, the doll in my hands moved her head and took a big breath. It shocked me so badly I jumped to my feet, almost throwing her into the air. Fortunately, I had enough sense to set her gently on the cot before freaking out. Well, there goes my doll theory. I rushed to the door and pressed my ear to it.
What time does the store open?
I heard the smoker say.
The door said 6 a.m.
We need to get that baby, even if we have to kill for it. If we don't get it back to JP Medical, we will get the bullet instead. Now get out of my way, you idiot.
I have to warn my boss, I whispered and ran to get my phone. I had tossed it on my cot next to the bag, and all my dirty clothes are piled on top of it. In a rush, I threw them from my cot, but the phone wasn't there. Where is it? I muttered. In my haste, I knocked over the paper bag, spilling the remainder of the contents onto the cot next to the baby, who was looking up at me with big blue eyes. Next to her head was my phone. I picked it up and called my boss. Hurry and answer, I whispered.
Jack, what are you calling me for?
Something weird happened last night. You are not going to believe this. I proceeded to tell him about all that had happened earlier that morning, except I left out the bag, which meant I had to change the story somewhat. I admit I'm a terrible liar, but I lied like a pro. Anything to save the man who took me in when my parents died.
I'll be careful,
Bob said. At least call the police, I pleaded.
I will if I see anyone around here that looks suspicious. You better report everything to the police.
I'm heading down to the station right now. Just don't open the store until the police get here. Yeah, and I'm going through the coal chute on the other side of the building, I thought. I knew he wouldn't believe me, I said to the baby as I tried my best to wrap the now wiggling thing into her blanket and noticed she had a diaper on. The contents of the bag scattered beside her consisted of an unopened package of diapers, a package of baby wipes, 2 cans of formula, a baby bottle, a large jar of hot sauce, and a box with holes in it. Whatever was in the box was scratching to get out. The sound it made had the baby's full attention. She made a soft, happy sound that bordered on laughing. Though we needed to get going, my curiosity got the better of me, so I picked up the box. The baby started kicking her feet as if she was excited about what was in the box too. I slowly lifted the lid. A white mouse popped its head out, trying to escape. My reflexes kicked in and I shut the lid down hard, knocking it back into the box. That's silly. Why would someone put a mouse in this bag with all your stuff? Is it a pet of yours? The baby's eyes grew big with excitement as I waved the box closer to her. Do you want to see the mouse? The way I was talking to this baby would be embarrassing if my friends were here. But since they weren't, what did I care if I was talking like a baby? I put the mouse near the baby and grabbed my gym bag out from under the cot. I hadn't used it since I graduated from high school 3 months ago. You know what? I think we should go to the beach house in Florida. As soon as we get out of here, I'll call Aunt Cass. I think that you are going to bring more trouble than Bob is ready for. I just hope he doesn't open the store until the police arrive. I packed my clothes, some snacks, and all the baby items. When I put the mouse in the bag, the baby let out a scream that I was sure could be heard outside. Quiet. Do you want the bad guys to come take you away? I pulled the box with the mouse out and she immediately stopped crying. You really like this mouse, don't you? Then I placed my pillow into the bag and wrapped the baby up with the mouse by her head. But she started crying again. What do you want? Without thinking, I opened the box. She started kicking her feet and making that soft, happy sound again. So, I picked up the mouse by its tail and dangled it above her. It twisted every which way in the air. With one fell swoop, she opened her mouth, chomped down on the mouse's head, and sucked it down whole while it continued to wiggle down her throat. I rushed to the bathroom to throw up. It took me a few minutes hovering over the toilet bowl to get my composure. When I returned to my cot, she was asleep again. You certainly aren't a normal baby. I still can't believe you downed a whole mouse. My stomach turned again at the thought. I put a hand on my stomach and glanced at my phone. We better go. The store will be opened in 20 minutes. I quickly placed her into the bag and zipped it up so that it was still opened over the baby's face. I picked up my gym bag and headed to the other side of the store where the old cold shaft was. Under the store was storage for cased goods waiting to be placed on a shelf upstairs. When the trucks come, I was the one who told the delivery person where to stack each box. What I created was an organized maze, and only I knew exactly where everything was located. Bob would come down here and search for an hour before he would finally call me to ask where something was. I grabbed a hammer from the tool shelf and made my way to the old coal chute. Then I would have to take a few boards down and unlatch it. Before I began to remove boards, I checked on the baby. I'm glad you're asleep, I whispered. Now how am I going to quietly remove these boards? So you stay asleep? The first board came off easily with the nails squeaking just a little. I began to work on the next one, but my time was running out. I could hear Bob yelling at someone at the top of the ramp that led to the basement. In my haste, I jerked it off so hard that the wood split in 2 pieces, making a loud cracking noise. The baby only turned her head and pursed her lips, making a sucking noise. She was the strangest creature to me, but I felt she needed me, and I was going to do whatever it took to keep her away from anybody who was willing to kill to get her. The last board was rusted in place and was so dirty that I wished I had grabbed a crowbar instead of a hammer. I finally gave up trying to be quiet, and with all the yelling going on upstairs, no one but the baby would hear me. With all my strength, I slammed the hammer into the center of the old board. It cracked much too easy, and I hit the metal door of the old coal chute, making a resonating sound as if I had hit a gong. There was silence for a second. I held my breath.
Get out of our way, old man.
I clearly heard the smoker say. Then I heard a muffled sound of a gun going off. A sound I never wanted to hear again. Bob, I whispered. I didn't have time to think about him. With the hammer, I knocked the old latch, releasing the door, and slid my gym bag through the opening outside before squeezing my way out. I glanced below me and saw 3 men searching the maze of boxes. That was all the incentive I needed to get going. Last night's rain had turned to snow, and I worried about the trail I would leave, so I rushed to the end of the road, heading for a busy street. Just as I turned the corner, I heard sirens screeching and watched the police pull up to the store. Thank goodness, I sighed, and checked the baby, who was still sleeping, and continued on my way, trying my best not to jostle my gym bag too much. I walked as fast as I could to the nearest bus stop. With my hood pulled over my head, I tried to blend into the crowds of people heading off to work. A plan was forming inside my head. I hope I didn't forget my wallet. I whispered to myself as I searched my pockets for it. During all the excitement of the early morning, I had tucked it in the front pocket of my jacket. Not a place where I usually put it. I stood in a small group of people who were waiting to board the bus.
Your bag isn't zipped up all the way.
A kind-looking older woman said. I know. I smiled at her. The zipper sticks if I zip it up all the way. She nodded her head, believing my lie. Please don't wake up until I figure out what to do. I thought, peering down at the opening of my bag. I boarded the bus and sat in the middle near the exit. My phone started to buzz. I pulled it out of my pocket. Lewis had texted me.
Where are you? My mom woke me up saying that Bob had been killed and the police are looking for you.
I knew that they could trace a cell phone if it is turned on because my friend Jason lost his phone and that was how we found it. Without answering, I completely turned off my phone and vowed not to use it again until I figured out what was going on. We need to get off this bus and call my aunt. I whispered to my bag. I guess we won't be going to the police like I told Bob. My throat hitched. Bob was dead, and I was being blamed for it. Dad always told me if you ever get in trouble, call someone in your mom's family. The problem was the only phone number I had was my Aunt Cass's. Running my hand over the screen of my phone, I pondered if it was worth the risk to use it one more time to call my aunt, as I had planned before Bob had been shot. The bus stopped, and people started to exit the bus. My ears pricked as I heard the voice of the smoker just outside the bus. My heart pounded into my throat as I scrambled to my feet. Daring to glance in the direction of the voice, I bent down and grabbed my gym bag. It was the smoker. He was standing outside the bus puffing on a cigar. The large man I had seen the night before was standing next to him. They were scanning the faces of those coming off the bus. The big burly man had ginger hair and freckles all over his face. The smoker was short with a round belly. He would have made a good Santa Claus. I had to get off the bus without being seen. By now they surely knew what I looked like and where I was because of my cell phone. I pulled on the ties of my hood and headed to the front of the bus away from the voice of the smoker. Not wanting to draw attention, I didn't dare look at the baby. She was quiet, so I hoped she was still asleep as we stepped out into the cold. I kept close to the bus and ducked in front of it, tossing my cell phone under one of the tires. The elderly woman who had spoken to me earlier was struggling to pull a small shopping basket on wheels through the snow. The road was slippery from the rain earlier. I ran my free arm under hers as she slipped and fell into me.
I'm so sorry.
She stammered. Her light blue eyes searched my face.
Oh, it's you. Did I knock anything out of your bag?
I smiled and glanced at my gym bag. No. Can I help you cross the street? I offered.
You are very nice for a young man,
she said and held tightly to my arm.
I used to have a son like you. He died while serving our country.
I'm so sorry to hear that. About a year ago, I lost my parents.
Aren't we a pair?
She chuckled and patted my arm. I glanced behind us to see if we were being followed. The bus was still loading people and had not moved forward yet.
Excuse me.
I heard the smoker say. His voice had me walking the woman a little too fast, but she didn't complain. She probably thought that I just wanted to get off the slippery street. We hurried to the other side. When I heard the bus brakes hiss, I glanced over my shoulder to see it move forward. The smoker was standing on the sidewalk. He had not gotten on the bus. My hope was that he would not suspect me as I was not alone anymore. I would be happy to walk you where you need to go, I offered.
You are such a gentleman. I'm headed home about 2 blocks from here.
I'm glad to help.
Thank you,
she said and smiled up at me.
My name is Hattie.
I'm Jack, I said shyly, dipping my head. As we walked, she talked about her husband who was bedridden and that she had gone out to get medication and some food, but had not planned on the weather being so cold. You really like to start the day early, I commented and glanced behind us. No one seemed to be following. We crossed another street and turned left. She stopped in the middle of the block in front of an old town house that had several stairs leading up to the door. They were clear of snow and ice. We paused at the bottom of the stairs. I stood in front of her so I had a clear view of the street in case the smoker and his buddy had somehow figured out where I had gone. Who cleans off your stairs?
My neighbor. I think he would like my husband to pass on so he could have a chance with me. Is it wrong for me to give him hope for small favors?
She said, lifting her basket onto the first step. Though I could not see her face totally, I knew she was smiling. We all do what we must to survive, I chuckled. Here, let me carry that to your door. I let go of her arm and grabbed the basket before she could protest. A gust of cold wind blew through the neighborhood, carried with it a foreboding feeling. Snow began to fall heavily from the sky, and I shivered as she reached the door and unlocked it. I was about to turn and leave when she took hold of my arm.
Please come in and let me at least get you something hot to drink before sending you on your way. It's the least I can do for all of your kindness.
I glanced down at my bag and then up the street just as the smoker and the ginger-headed thug came into view. Sure, I said and pushed the door open. How do they keep finding me? I thought as I shook snow from my hair. It was not my intention to endanger this kind lady or her husband, but I had nowhere else to go. The bag dangling from my arm was coated with a light layer of snow, and I was worried about how the cold would affect the baby. My mind spun on the various things I could do and say if the baby woke up again. But my biggest worry was the nice lady who had invited me into her house. Would I be blamed for her murder too? I needed more time to think. Do you have a restroom? I asked politely.
It's at the end of the hall, first door to your left.
I closed and locked the door behind me. Out in the hallway, I heard Hattie talking to a man.
Thank you for sitting with him, Jim.
He is not feeling well and just went to sleep.
I'll check on him. See you tomorrow.
I heard the front door shut before looking around the room. The bathroom was decorated with a rose pattern from the toilet seat cover to the shower curtains. The carpet was pink to match the roses. In the wash basin, a gray cat looked up at me and meowed. Hi, kitty, I said and sat on the toilet lid and carefully pulled the baby out of the bag. How are they tracking us? I whispered to her and glanced at the cat who was sleeping again. The baby's hand bobbed free from the blanket. You're so cold, I whispered as I took hold of her arm and tried to tuck it back in. Just above her elbow on the back of her arm, I felt a Band-Aid. Placing my hand under her like she was a football, I cradled her to my chest to examine the back of her arm. She smelled kind of like my mother, like sheets smell when they are left outside to dry. She smelled slightly different, as if someone had eaten an orange and rubbed it lightly on her blankets. Her scent distracted me for a minute. Focus, Jack, I reminded myself. There was a bruised-looking area under her delicate scales that the Band-Aid didn't quite cover. I know that you are special, but someone went to a lot of trouble to save you, and now I'm in trouble. I slowly pulled the Band-Aid halfway off. There was a 2-inch incision carefully cut in between her scales that was held together with glue. It reminded me of a show I watched with my parents about people trafficking. What I needed was something to get the glue off with. Next to the sink was a pair of tweezers. I stood and gently laid the baby on the counter on her belly. With the tweezers in hand, I began pulling at the glue. Several of her small scales came off with it as I pulled the complete strand of glue off. I was surprised that she only moved a little. The wound opened up without me pulling on it, and the edge of a square black cube slowly came to the opening. Using the tweezers, I gently pulled the device out. There wasn't any blood on the device, nor did the wound bleed. I reattached the Band-Aid. She didn't move at all. I carefully turned her over. That's when I noticed that she was hardly breathing. I don't know how to take care of you, I whispered. I should just take you to the police. The thought had tears forming in my eyes. This baby felt like family to me. Maybe it was because I lost my parents that had me feeling this way, or the way she smelled. That is when she reached up and took hold of my baby finger and opened her eyes. At that moment, I would have done anything for her. No one is going to take you from me. I won't let them. But I don't have a clue how to take care of you. Hattie knocked on the door.
Are you all right?
She asked. I'm fine. Do you have any air freshener? She chuckled softly.
In the cupboard under the sink.
I found it and started spraying. Then I put the baby carefully back into the bag. She was still awake and tracking my every move with her big blue eyes. I put the spray away and looked about the room. The cat sneezed, making the bell on its collar chime. I picked up the device and contemplated attaching it to the collar. But that would bring trouble for Hattie and her husband. She had been so nice, and just me being here was putting her in enough danger. That's when I noticed a small window above the tub. I stepped into the tub and pulled the window open. We were too far from the ground to escape out of it, but I could throw the device out and hopefully the smoker would not bother Hattie. Time was running out. By now they would know that the baby was in this house. I peered out the window into the falling snow. Then I spotted a dump truck collecting trash. Sticking my arm out the window as far as I could, I gave the device a quick flick. It flew high into the air and fell on the rim of a large dumpster, making a pinging sound. I squinted my eyes and tilted my body as if I could will the black square to fall into the garbage bin and not the ground. It worked, I whispered as it fell inside the can. I turned around and put the baby back into my gym bag and zipped it halfway up. Please don't get upset, I whispered. I just need to make sure Hattie is safe and make a phone call to my Aunt Cass. Then I will find a place where I can take you out of the bag, I promised. The cat jumped out of the sink and went to the door and meowed loudly. Okay, kitty, I said and flushed the toilet before unlocking the door. The cat was the first to exit the room. I picked up my bag and walked into the hallway. Hattie was in the hallway too. She turned to look at me.
Is everything okay?
She seemed concerned. Yes, I'm fine. Just stomach issues. I lied again. She turned towards the door. I could see through the glass of the window that it was the smoker. He still had the cigar in his mouth. It was not lit. Without thinking, I grabbed hold of her arm. Do you have a phone I could use? My aunt is supposed to pick me up and I need to let her know where. I put my hand in my pockets like I was looking for something. I've looked everywhere for my phone, but I must have left it at home. I shrugged. The smoker turned away from the door. I know I shouldn't lie so much, but I couldn't let her open that door knowing what they did to Bob. She pointed at an old phone hanging on the wall in the kitchen. She went to answer the door, but I knew no one would be there. The phone handle was heavy in my hand as I lifted the receiver and looked at the push buttons. Now if I can only remember my aunt's phone number, I thought as I started pushing buttons. On my first attempt, the phone buzzed and told me that the number was no longer in service. My second try, I transposed the last two numbers and the phone started to ring.
Hello?
A gruff man's voice said, "Is Cass there?" I asked, knowing that I had got it wrong again.
No one here by that name.
Sorry, I must have dialed the number wrong. I hung up the phone and scratched my head as if that would help.
All these fancy phones are bad for the memory,
Hattie said, shaking her head and chuckling. She was back in the kitchen. I know, I sighed. In my mind, I pictured her contact information until I was able to see her number. Before it could leave me, I quickly typed it in. As the phone rang, I twisted my fingers nervously in the cord of the phone.
Hello.
My aunt said. I breathed a sigh of relief. Cass, this is Jack. Could you come get me? My toe tapped nervously. What if she said no? I need a ride, I said, glancing at Hattie sitting at the kitchen table. She stirred the hot drink in front of her with a spoon.
I get it. You can't talk. You do realize I'm 4 hours away. Are you in big trouble?
I know it's out of your way, but it's snowing hard outside.
I'll get Uncle Frank to fly me in. It will still take me over an hour. Can you get to the airport?
Where do you want to meet? I asked.
Near the Delta Airlines check-in desk.
Got it, I said, and without saying goodbye, I hung up the phone. Hattie had a concerned look on her face. I barely noticed. My attention was drawn to the cup on the table. Steam was swirling out of it. The drink looked so warm and inviting that I scooped up my bag and found myself sitting across from Hattie.
What kind of trouble are you in, son?
She asked as I took my first sip of the warm liquid. I haven't done anything wrong, but some men are after me.
Were they at the door?
Hattie questioned kindly. Yes, but they left, so you should be safe. Just don't open your door to anyone who looks like Santa Claus. I wanted to hit my head on the table. Why was I telling her this? Had I gone completely mad? My mind spun. Why couldn't I just keep my mouth shut? She placed a hand on mine.
Jack, is there anything I can do to help?
You have been kind enough. I smiled at her. I just need to get a ride to the airport so I can leave this town. That is when an awful stench filled the air and I covered my nose.
Is your stomach acting up again?
The smell was coming from my bag. It was as if green vapors were wafting from it. Acting like I had a stomach cramp, I clutched my abs. Yeah, I breathed.
Maybe all the stress you're going through is causing it.
Hattie called after me as I grabbed my bag and ran off to the bathroom. When the door was locked, I bent down to unzip the bag. The baby had wiggled loose from the blanket and was wide awake. She stunk so bad my eyes were watering. "That's it. I am never feeding you another mouse," I whispered. "We are in trouble and I have no idea how to change a diaper." From beneath her I took out a diaper and pulled it open. Why didn't they put instructions in the bag? It would have been so helpful. I opened the tabs and laid it on the counter. Then I carefully pulled the baby from the bag and placed her on top of the clean diaper. The tabs were in the front. When I pulled the tabs loose from the dirty diaper, I realized I had the clean diaper backwards. I'm just going to go with it. With my eyes squinted, I held my breath and started to remove the diaper. It was filled with black tar. I turned on the faucet and ran it until it was warm. "Please don't get mad at me, but I don't know how else to get you cleaned up." I slid her over into the sink until water was spilling over her belly. Poo was everywhere, smeared on the counter and down the side of the sink. To say I was bad at this would be an understatement. She wiggled around, clearly not liking the water. I scrubbed her with my hand as good as I could. When she was all cleaned, I fixed the diaper and placed her on it dripping wet. A small squeal escaped her lips as if she knew that I didn't want her to cry. I used the hand towel to dry her off. The diaper was another problem. How do moms ever get these things straight? She found her fingers and started sucking on them. After 2 tries to straighten it out, I gave up. Took me several minutes to clean up all the poo. I was afraid to use anything but toilet paper and flushed the toilet when I was finished. What am I going to do with this diaper? I thought of putting it in the bag and tossing it into the nearest trash. Then I thought of the window. It worked great last time. I whispered to the baby as I stepped into the tub and cracked open the window. Santa was in the alley looking at a tablet and the red-haired man was digging around in the trash. The trash collector was just dumping the trash cans next door. I guess that would be a bad idea. How am I going to keep this from stinking? I quietly closed the window. The baby just continued to suck her fingers as she watched my every move. I carefully rolled the diaper up into a ball, wrapped toilet paper around it, and sprayed it with room freshener. Then I stuffed it into a side pocket and zipped it up. It still stinks, but not too bad. Taking the pink blanket in one hand and with the other, I scooped the baby up and placed the blanket beneath her. This time she squirmed as I tried to wrap her in it. She was not excited about being put back into my gym bag either. "I guess we better go before you cry," I said as she let out a soft whine of complaint. As I zipped the bag up to her face, she calmed down and started sucking her fingers again. Maybe she likes the dark. I opened the door and headed back to the kitchen. With the smoker being so close, I decided to stay as long as the baby would let me. As Hattie and I talked, I kept a close eye on my bag. The baby moved a little, but then she was still, hopefully asleep. The snowfall started to slow. I looked at the clock on the wall. "I guess I better go," I said. "I've been here over an hour and stunk up your bathroom more than once." We both laughed. Hattie stood first and went to a jar on the kitchen counter filled to the top with cookies. She pulled a half-dozen cookies from it and began to put them into a Ziploc bag. "You don't need to do that, Hattie," I said, standing to leave.
I want to. Besides, you have a long trip ahead of you, don't you?
I smiled gratefully at her and took the cookies. "Thank you. Snickerdoodles are my favorite," I said, bent down, and kissed her on the cheek, which earned me a smile from her. It was still bitterly cold as I stepped out of Hattie's house and hurried down the stairs. I stashed the cookies in the pocket of my jacket. There was no sign of the smoker or his red-headed companion. "We need to get a taxi," I said as I ran for the nearest busy street. A bit of good luck struck me as I rounded the corner. A taxi was letting off a businesswoman wearing a black suit. In my haste to get to the cab before it could leave, I slipped and almost knocked the lady over. "Sorry," I said. "I didn't want the driver to leave." She flipped her short blonde hair out of her face. Then she looked me up and down, stuck her nose in the air, and slammed the car door shut behind her. I did not give her a second thought. Yanking the door back open, I stuck my head into the cab. "I need a ride to the airport." The words rushed out of my mouth. It was freezing cold, and I was worried the smoker was still in the area. I glanced about me to make sure we were not seen.
"Sure, kid.
The cab driver said,
I have another pickup to make before I can take you."
"That's fine," I said and slid into the back seat. It was a little warmer in the cab. The driver turned and looked at me over his shoulder.
Sorry my heater isn't working very well today. It will take her a while to warm up the cab.
He patted the dashboard lovingly. I nodded my head and pulled my bag into my lap. Wanting to keep the baby warm, I held it close to me. A feeling of peace fell over me and I laid my head on the window. Faces and buildings bleared into the background as my eyes closed.
This is the end of Chapter 2, Part 2.
Fire and brimstone spin around.